Hello and welcome back to a new course. My name is Avilash. You are watching Selenium Express, and in this short course, we're going to be discussing about the Spring Boot, the features of the Spring Boot, and why everyone is so mad about Spring Boot. What features Spring Boot is providing to the developers so that all the developers are crazy about Spring Boot, and without Spring Boot, I think in 2023, it's very difficult to get a job in Java field. Alright then, so let's just get started with this course and let's understand Spring Boot from scratch. But let me tell you, I am not going to cover any module here. I'm not going to cover Spring REST or Spring ORM or Spring Security or Webflux or MVC, anything in detail over here. I'm going to be exploring Spring Boot as a framework. So this tutorial or this set of tutorials aiming to cover the features of the Spring Boot. So if you have a question, how can I know whether I can follow this series or not? Here are 3 questions which will help you to find out whether you have the prerequisites or not. The question number 1, what is a Spring Bean and how to create an object in Spring? Do you know about the annotations called addBean and addComponent? If yes, then you are eligible. The question number 2, what is a Spring controller and how to create a controller in Spring? Do you know about an annotation called addController? If yes, then you are eligible. And the question number 3, what is a Spring container and do you know about Spring IOC? Do you know about application context, web application context, annotation config application context, the containers which are available in Spring? Generally, if you understand what is a container and the object are staying inside the container in Spring, then you are ready to go, my friend. Continue along with this series. You are eligible, my friend. There is no questions about it. In case you don't have the prerequisite, please navigate to my Spring Core course and complete that first. And I swear, you're going to be having a lot of basics and foundation to go further from there. All right? See you in the course. All right, so what I am trying to build in this particular video, it is very simple. I'm trying to create here a simple Hello World Spring REST application where I will be creating an endpoint called /hello and it is going to give me back a string called Hello Spring Boot. This is my assignment for this video. Now you might be wondering, okay Avilas, you know what, this is very straightforward. I know how to do it in Spring MVC. Well, I'm not here to teach you how to build this application. You know it better if you are here and continuing with this particular series. My intention here is to make it work with Spring Boot. So I won't be going to Spring Initializer website or I will not be downloading any Spring Boot ready-made project. Rather, I will create it by myself. We will try to understand here what is a Spring Boot starter project? Why do we need it? What is a Spring Boot starter parent and why do we need a parent in Spring Boot? What is Spring Boot AutoConfiguration and how it is going to help a developer? What is Spring Boot starter file? What is the entry point to a Spring Boot application and how a Spring Boot application starts? And finally, we will understand about a special annotation called @EnableAutoConfiguration. And once we understand all these things, we're going to be pulling in all these things together and we're going to be making our application work. Are you ready and excited? So let's just get started with the episode number 1 with our Hello Spring Boot series. Alright, so let's just get started with our project right now. And this is going to be a very simple Spring Boot Hello World kind of a project. But the good news is everything we're going to be building it from scratch. We are not going to go to Spring Initializer website. We are not going to download anything. We are going to set up the Spring Boot project. We're going to be doing all sort of things over here and we're going to be making it work. And somebody only can do it if he has some idea about how the boot basically works. So if you're new to Spring Boot, no worries. I'm here to help you. Have that trust in me. Let's just get started with this project. And we're going to be starting with the project by creating a new Maven project. So I can click on new Maven project. And I want to create this project from scratch. So I will not be using any archetype. So skip archetype selection and click on next. So I'm going to create a very simple Maven project. And eventually I'll be adding Spring Boot, a lot of different things we're going to be doing over here with this particular project. So the artifact, the project name is going to be Hello Spring Boot. The group ID is going to be com.seleniumexpress.hello spring app, something random I'm giving. The name of the project, I'm going to be saying it as Hello Spring Boot project. Okay. The description, I'm going to leave it as blank, and I don't have any parent project to specify over here. So these are the details of the project, and I'm going to click on finish here. This is going to help me to create a Hello Spring Boot project. Okay. So let's go ahead right now and let's just bring Spring to our project, because as I said, inside the Hello Spring Boot project, the main intention here is to build a REST endpoint, and we're going to be creating a Hello World endpoint over here. Okay, we're going to be creating a REST controller over here. So all the Java files will go to the source main Java folder. Okay, but before I go ahead and start writing a Java file here, first I have to make this application a Spring application, and I basically need to build a web app. So that's why I need to give the Spring support to this particular project so that it can be treated as a Spring web application. Right here in this project, you can see we have only the project related information inside the pom.xml file. It's just like the project name, the project version, the artifact, and the group ID that I have specified. We don't have anything else over here. So first of all, I'm going to be adding a dependency. So I'm going to be clicking on this dependency tag, and I'll be adding a dependency. So what dependency I'm going to add over here? So I'm going to be adding a dependency called Spring Web. Okay, why I'm going to add the Spring Web dependency? By the way, I'm creating a web application, and to create a web application in Spring, I have to go ahead and I have to get the Spring Web dependency. So basically, I will go over here to Google and just type Maven repo here. Okay, I'll go to the Maven repository, and here I need to look for the Spring Web MVC project. Okay, so I can just type Spring Web MVC and can look for that particular dependency. Okay, so if you go to the latest version of this particular project called Spring Web MVC, this is the project version. So you can see the dependency, the artifact is Spring Web MVC. So basically this is the dependency that I need to build the Spring Web application or the web application in Spring. But apart from this dependency, I may need a lot of other dependency as well, okay, that I need to also keep on adding to my project. So instead of downloading or getting all the dependency that I need for the project, and instead of adding all these things over here, I will be doing a simple thing. I'll use the Spring Boot feature here. And that feature is going to add a starter dependency. Mark my word, I said I'll be adding a starter dependency. What I mean by that? So first of all, previously I did type Spring Web MVC. Now you just type Spring Boot Starter Web. Just remove the MVC. Okay. Just search for this. I'll tell you why do you need this particular dependency, but you can see there is a dependency is popping up. Go to the Spring Boot Starter Web, go to the latest version of that, which is 3.1.1. Copy this dependency of the Spring Boot Starter Web, go back to your project and put it over here. Okay. And I will be resize this a little bit. Why I have added this dependency and what it is going to do. Okay. So I wanted to develop a endpoint, which is a REST endpoint, and I want to create a web application. So web application means I should accept request, I should give you the response back. So if I want to create this, I need the Spring Web basic dependency, right? So right now I don't have any Maven dependency over here, but the moment I do Control S, look at over here, I got this Maven dependency. If I expand it, you can see the Spring Web MVC jar is also here. So I got my desired jar, but look at the other stuff. I also got a lot of other different jars here that Spring Boot has added for me, because Spring knows that if I want to create a Spring Boot application, which is a web application, then along the way, I will be needing all these jars, right? So basically, if you go to this dependency hierarchy, you can see this is the only dependency that I have added. So this is the only dependency that I have added, but look at that, Spring Boot has got me all this dependency because it knows like I as a developer will be needing it along the way. So the starter web dependency not only got me the web MVC dependency, rather it just got me all different kind of dependency that I'll be needing in future. So I'll be showing you that whenever I'll be needing, but yeah, I got a lot of different things over here. This is just bundle it off, and I'm just placing it over here, and along the way it is just getting me all these things transitively. Just to remember that. Okay, so this is why I have added a Spring Boot starter web. Starter, like I want to start the Spring Boot web project. So all the things that I need, just get everything. So I as a developer doesn't need to go to the web, doesn't need to search for everything, doesn't need to worry about all the versions that I will be needing, and I don't have to do all these things. So Spring has different type of starter project for different types of project. Right now I'm creating a REST project or a web application, so I am using the starter web. But if you are going with a microservices application or a security application or a batch application or any kind of other application, data JP application or any kind of other application, they have different starter project, okay, where Spring will get you everything. You don't have to go as a developer and grab everything by yourself. You don't have to do it, okay? I think you understand, right, why I have added this and what is a Spring Boot starter dependency means. The next thing that I want to do over here is the version number. Just have a look at that. The Spring Boot starter web has a version. This is the version of the project that I'm using. But right now, I have only one dependency, but along the way, I can have many, right? I can grab X dependency, Y dependency, Z dependency. I can grab a whole different types of dependencies, right? And I also need to worry about their versions, because as a dev, it is my responsibility to understand about the compatibility. So if the X dependency version number this is going to be supported with the Y dependency version number this, to understand that and whether the versions are matching or whether these versions are compatible, whether this jar can be added together or not, that I as a developer need to take care of. But it used to be, not right now, because Spring Boot is also going to help with the version management. So how it is going to happen? So look at that, line number 15, the version, here it is mentioned at 3.1.1, Spring Boot starter web version. Delete it, okay? Now if you're gonna delete it, what I'm saying that I will not manage the version of the dependency. If I do Control S, look at that, I'm getting a problem right now. It's just saying that, okay, you are getting a problem because of the dependency version for the Spring Framework boot Spring Boot starter web jar is missing. So the version number is missing. So I have to add the version, but I will not add it. I'll ask Spring Boot to do it. So Spring Boot has another beautiful feature that is going to help me for the version management as well. And how to take advantages of that? And for that, I have to add one more thing to my POM. So I will go to my Maven repo, and here I can look for something called Spring Boot starter parent. Okay, so I want to get a parent dependency of Spring Boot, which is going to eventually help me for my version management. I'll tell you how. So Spring Boot starter parent, search for this, get the dependency, copy this, and go over there, go out of the dependency right here to the line number 7 and paste it. I am telling you why I have pasted it out of the dependency. Because in the dependency, dependencies, this tag that you are seeing, inside this I can keep on adding different types of dependency, which are basically different projects that I want to use it with this project. So whenever I added this dependency, I just got a lot of different jars inside my, inside my Maven dependency. I think that thing is gone because the version number is missing from here. So basically by adding the dependency, what I mean that, I want to grab some jars and I want to use it with the Spring Boot project. But with this, what I want to say, I don't want to use this artifact as a dependency. Let me remove and clean all this thing. I don't want to use this artifact called Spring Boot Startup Parent as a dependency. So remove everything, the dependency stuff and the type thing. So only I need these three things: group ID, artifact, and version. And I will wrap it up with a parent. Okay. So when I say a parent, do you have anything in your mind right now? Parent? Parent means Bap. Okay, parent means father, right? So what children gets from parent? Something they inherit, right? So what they inherit? They inherit few properties from the parent. Same thing will happen over here. So inside the parent, inside the Spring Boot Startup Parent, I have added this version. So I can do a Control S right now. I can see this error mark will go away. So what basically happens here, whatever the versions that you're going to be specifying here, that is going to be your Spring Boot version. And all the dependency that you will be mentioning inside this dependency stack, all those dependency will grab the version or inherit the version from the parent. So right now, the Spring Boot Startup Parent version is 3.1.1. So by default, this particular project that I have, Spring Boot Startup Web, is also inheriting the same version from the parent. So the version number is going to be inherited from this. And this Spring Boot Startup Parent is going to take care of my version management of different jars or dependency that I'll be adding. Just do remember that it can be Spring jars or it can be some other jars as well. Spring Boot Startup Parent is also having support for that. Okay, it is there for your version management. Okay, so far things are good. So I have just added one dependency, okay, and one parent thing over here. Remember that the parent is not a dependency. Parent is not going to give you any jar. So if you go over here and look for something called Spring Boot Startup Parent, there will be nothing over here called Spring Boot Startup Parent or something inside this jars that you have downloaded. Okay, hopefully that is making sense. So with this, my Spring Boot project setup is done. I can just do a Control S. I think I can use my Spring Boot project right now. I can go to the source main Java and I can start creating my endpoint right now. I can start creating a controller right now where I can basically start developing my web application. So let's just go for it. Alright, so now let me close this form.xml file. Let me go to the source main Java folder. And right here, let me just create a new class. And this class is going to be my controller class. So I'll just say hello world controller. And I'll put it inside a package called com.seleniumexpress.hello Spring Boot app. Okay, let's just do a finish. So there you go. This is my controller. So the next thing that I want to do here, I want to make it a controller. You guys know how to make it a controller. I'm going to be saying it as a REST controller. And I'm going to be quickly developing a endpoint over here called public string show hello world string. Okay. And right here, I will just return a hello Spring Boot string over here. I'm going to be mapping it with a endpoint. So this is going to be a GET request. So I'll be saying GET mapping. And right here, I'll be giving my endpoint name as hello. Okay. So this is my RESTful endpoint, which is going to be very straightforward. All right. So right now, let's just go ahead and let's just try running this application And let's just see like, if we can test it out, because the goal here is to test this application and whether I can hit this endpoint and whether I'm getting this response back. But to run this application, right, if I want to run this particular particular file, can I do right click, run as? I am not getting any option to run this as a Java application or a Spring Boot application. I'm not getting any option, and that's valid, because how can I run this Java file? It doesn't have any main method. So I have to create a class where I can basically write a main method and I can start my application from there. So basically I can write a main method inside this hello world controller, or I can do one work. I can go to the package that I have created and I'll create a new class. I can give the class name as anything. I'm going to be saying it as app or maybe starter app, because this particular Java class is going to help me to start my application. This particular Java class is going to be the starter for my particular project. And if a Java class is going to start, then obviously it is going to be starting from a main method. So I'll create a main method over here, and I have to start my application, start my app here. So you have to start your application over here. So how to start your application or how to run your Spring Boot application? So to run or start your application, you have to use a method called run, and that is going to come from a class called SpringApplicaiton. So let's just use this class called SpringApplicaiton, and let's just create an object for SpringApplicaiton. So I'll go ahead and create an object for SpringApplicaiton class. So I will expand this class for a minute. Okay, SpringApplicaiton is equal to new SpringApplicaiton, and I'm going to be saying SpringApplicaiton.run, and this run method is just going to help me to start my Spring Boot application. Okay, so my program execution starts from here. So what I understand is that so far I'm creating an object of the SpringApplicaiton class, and this class has a run method, and this run method is going to help me to start my Spring Boot project. But now here is the question. If I want to run this application right now, I have a main method right here. So can I do right click, run as, and now I'm getting the Java application to choose as an option. So I'm going to click over here. Okay, so now it is just giving me some prompt here. So let's analyze this. So now there is some logs over here. So there is a log coming from the starter app, and mind you that the class name is starter app, right? So from the starter app there is some logs, and it is saying that starting starter app using the Java 19 version, blah blah blah. That's fine. Now it is saying there is no active profile set, falling back to the number 1 profile, which is default. We'll consider this line later, but here is an important line: application run failed. So it is saying that your application cannot be started because the sources must not be empty. So it is saying that, okay, I will start your Spring Boot application, but what application to start? What is the entry point to your application? Now I just told you, right? Main method is going to be my entry point. I'm running this. I'm getting a run as Java application option. So my program execution will be starting from here only. Okay. So now Spring is saying, okay, that is for your reference, but to start a Spring Boot project, you have to give me the source. You have to tell me where you have actually defined all sort of configuration and everything. Okay, I'll say, okay, use this starter app as my configuration class. Okay, so I'll just do copy this, use this class. I'll just put it over here. Use this class as the source. So this class is going to be help you to start my application, and this class is going to be the entry point to my application. And once the application is started, I can basically go to the hello world controller and I can test this endpoint. So this is what I mean. Okay, now let's just see if that is happening. Okay, let's just do a Control S, and I will just do right click, run as Java application. Let's see if it is working right now. And looks like there is some new error. So new improvement, obviously. So if you're getting some new errors, means like we are progressing. Now there is some other thing here. Application fails to start. So looks like Spring Boot is trying to start my application, but there is an exception encountered during the context initialization. canceling the refresh attempt, and it is just giving application context exception unable to start a server. Okay, now there are a lot of things in the, a lot of good information in the log. So it is saying that exception encountered during the context initialization. So I think the amount of code that I have written here in this couple of lines, it is just trying to create a context. Context means what? Context means a container. You know that Spring behind the scene uses a Spring container where it basically gathers and keep all the Spring beans. So looks like this particular run method that I have written, it is just trying to create a container behind the scene for me. Okay, I don't have to create that container by myself as a programmer. This run method is creating an application context or a container. But while creating that container, something is failing. Okay, and what is failing? It is saying that application context exception unable to start a web server. So it is saying that the container is failing because the web server cannot be started. Okay, so what I can get to understand from this line, that Spring behind the scene is creating a web server for me. I told you that in Spring Boot you don't need to add a server manually. And mind you that we are creating a web application. Okay, we are creating this application and this is a web application. We are creating some endpoints. Okay, so this application is going to be deployed to a web server, then only you can hit all this endpoint. And you need a web server like Apache Tomcat or JBoss or Jetty or Undertow. You need a web server. But I'm not adding any web server by myself. So looks like Spring is adding a web server for me. And that's what it is complaining. So it is trying to add a web server, but it is failing. Okay, so you can see application failed to start, and there is some description and there is some suggestion how can I fix this exception. Web application could not be started as there was no, and there is a class name or an interface name, some component name has been mentioned here. Servlet web server factory been defined on the context. So it is saying web application could not be started as there was no Servlet web server factory being defined inside the context. So what it does mean that, what I feel that Spring Boot is trying to create a container. Okay, or if I look inside my project, this is a web application. So maybe Spring Boot is sensing that this guy is creating a web application and I need to create a web server for him. Because if he is creating a web application, if he is trying to run his application like this with a main method, that means he wants to run it as a standalone application. He doesn't want to add any web server by himself. So let me create a web server for him. And it is trying to initialize a class behind the scene. And what is that class name? That class name is Servlet web server factory. And if I'm not wrong, this class is basically help you to set up a web server. Okay, so Spring is trying to initialize this class behind the scene, but for some reason it is failing. So let me just confirm this. Let me just copy this class name, Control C, whatever it is. Even I don't understand the class name or something. Don't think like this guy understand everything, right? I'm just randomly checking in front of you. I'm copying the class name that I got from the console, and I can see that there is something popped out over here, Servlet web server factory. So that's an internal class. Let me go inside it, and if I go to this class, you can see there is something written here, factory interface that can be used to create a web server. So looks like this interface is going to create a web server for you behind the scene. But I as a developer don't want to create that. I want Spring Boot to create it. Okay, so how to fix this up right now? So let me collapse my application. Okay, so here is my main file. Let me go to my main starter app. This is my starter app. This is my main method. Okay, now let me fix that error. Now let me just try helping Spring to initialize a web server for me, and this error will be fixed if I will help Spring to initialize this particular interface or this particular component. So basically what I will say Spring that, hey Spring, right now I told you that this starter app, this class, you can use it as a configuration. So do one thing. I know that you have a feature called auto configuration. You can automatically configure a lot of different things for the developer. So I also want you to automatically configure a web server for me out of the blue. Like you pray something to God and the God will give you that, right? Like that, I want to pray that, hey Spring, can I please request you to create me a web server? And the way I can request Spring is by doing this at enable auto configuration. Okay. So now the moment I'm going to write this annotation, I'm requesting Spring that, hey, just do some auto configuration magic and automatically configure a web server for me and automatically configure this particular thing for me, Servlet web server factory. So let's just see if that is happening right now. I have just added this annotation. I'm saying that Spring application is equal to new Spring application, giving the starter app over here. And the starter app is having this annotation. So Spring will use this class and use this annotation to start your application again. Let's just try to use our run method and just invoke our run method. So all these steps will happen one after another. So I'll click on Java application one more time, run it as Java application. Let me run this. It started starter app in 1.34 seconds. Looks like my Spring Boot application is started. So magic happened. Now you can see this. Tomcat started on port number 8080. And you can see this. Root web application context. Initialization completed 730 millisecond. That means the web application context, that container that Spring wanted to create, the application context, application context is for standalone application. Web application context is for web application. So behind the scenes, Spring is creating an application context or a web application context for me, where it has to keep some beans and it will be keeping all the objects inside the web application context, inside the container. So Spring has created the container successfully. Not only container, it also started a Tomcat. So it also configured a web server for me automatically, and it has started my app. And looks like started my app in 1.34 seconds, which is really cool. Okay. So now if my app is started, can I go ahead and can taste this application? Hello. Okay. So right now my app has been deployed to Tomcat on the port number 8080, right? So let's just go ahead and let's just do localhost colon 8080 slash, and my endpoint is /hello, right? Let's just do enter. Okay, I'm not getting anything. I'm getting a fallback response, and this is a 404 error page, and it is saying /hello endpoint is not available. That means the endpoint that I have created over here is not working. Okay, now let's just find out the reason why it is not working. Okay, so now let's just find out what's wrong. So looks like everything is good, but my endpoint is not working. Okay, why the endpoint is not working? My application is started. The log says the application is started fine, right here. Tomcat started on port number 8080, okay? And it is also saying that initializing Spring Dispatcher Servlet. So actually, I have not created any Dispatcher Servlet by myself. If you remember the last time that I have created a project, the simple Spring MVC project, they are the Dispatcher Servlet I only have created. But here, the Spring Boot has automatically created a Dispatcher Servlet for me. You can see this Dispatcher Servlet initialization. It is completed. It is saying that maybe because here inside the starter app, I have used this run method, and I have used this run method to run my Spring Boot application. And to this Spring application, I have given this starter app as a source. And this starter app is a configuration file, and where I have also mentioned that enable the auto configuration. So looks like Spring Boot has automatically created a Dispatcher Servlet for me using the auto configuration feature. And that is really cool that I don't have to spend time writing a Dispatcher Servlet by myself. And also, if you are creating a Dispatcher Servlet, the Dispatcher Servlet should be connected to the application context or a web application context where all the beans should be registered. And now the Dispatcher Servlet is also connected to a web application context, and I can see that on the log. this initialization is also completed successfully. So I have a dispatcher servlet, I have a front controller. It is also connected to a web application context or a Spring container where the Spring beans should be there. And here I can see inside the hello world controller, this is the REST controller. And as I have told you, if a class does have a REST controller annotation, this object creation, this class object will be created by Spring only. Why? Because REST controller internally has an annotation called controller. Controller has internally has an annotation called component. So you know that if you have a add component annotation on top of any classes, that object creation Spring will take care. We don't have to create it as a developer. We don't have to create the object. We need to give options to Spring. We have to tell Spring to create the object for us. And with the same formula, our hello world controller object is also going to be created by Spring only, because we have mentioned it as a REST controller, and REST controller is a stereotype annotation, and this annotation should be automatically detected by Spring during class path scanning or the component scanning. So where the component scan should happen? The component scan should happen in the configuration file. What is my configuration file? The starter app. I'm using starter app as my starting point to my application. I'm telling it to my Spring application that, hey, starter app should be the class that you should be using to start my application. I have mentioned everything right over there. I have said there that, hey, you should automatically configure all the needed things for me. Like that, I also need to tell Spring that, hey, you should be doing the component scan for me. So I'll be writing the component scan annotation over here. And if I do so, I feel the Spring will use this class to bootstrap. And here I'm telling it to do a component scanning. And if it will do the component scanning, you know that what do you mean by this component scan annotation? The component scan annotation here, that means the class that you have called starter app, whatever package this is in right now, if I link to editor, the starter app inside this package, com.seleniumexpress.hello SpringBoot App. Inside this, whatever the classes that you have, scan all the classes, look for that. If there is any classes annotated with add controller, add REST controller, add component, add repository, all this annotation, if there is any classes is having those kind of annotation, that Spring only need to create the object for that. And Spring only need to keep those objects inside the container. So right now, the class path scanning has been activated. The component scanning has been activated. Right now, the starter app will scan for every classes that is available inside the package, that whether those classes are having the add controller annotation. That means this class will be scanned and the object creation will also happen. This object will go to the container. And if this object will go to the container, the dispatcher servlet right now can take help from the container and can dispatch our request to the hello world controller whenever there is an incoming request called /hello. Let's see that if that is happening. I'll just save this application. I will stop my application and I will restart it. So I will stop it and I will go to my starter app. It has a main method. Let me do right click, run as Java application. Now, as you can see right now, my Tomcat has been started. Okay, and right now let me just go back to the endpoint. Let me do a enter and boom, we got hello Spring Boot. We have just done everything by ourselves. The setup is also has been done by ourselves only. But here one thing that you got to understand is that the main method is having this object called Spring Application, which is using the starter app as a configuration file. And here we have to add all our different annotation that can help Spring to get started. Okay. So much learning. Let's take a break. I will split this video over here. You can go next and can start learning. But here are some questions where you might be interested. Think about it. Here we have the Spring application constructor and we are passing the starter app. My question is, can we pass any other file name over here? Another question. We have the run method here. So what is the work of this run method? I told you that it will help us to create an application context. Is that it? Can we have access to that application context? Can we have access to that Spring container? What are the other works that the run method does? Isn't that an interesting interview question? Do prepare for it. I can see a couple of annotations here called component scan and @EnableAutoConfiguration. Do we have to write this couple of annotation every time? Or do we have a shortcut annotation available in Spring Boot? That's another popular interview question. So let's explore more in the next video, and I will solve these puzzles and give you an exciting overview of Spring Boot in the next part of this particular video. So don't forget to like this video if you really liked it, and support me by subscribing to my channel, and do share this video with your friends. Let me know your suggestion in the comments, guys. I really appreciate if you're gonna put a comment over there, and I love to read your comments. I'll see you guys next time. Till then, bye bye and happy coding.